I've been thinking a lot lately about radical acceptance and control, what we have control over, what we should accept, what we shouldn't accept, right? Because radical acceptance is a concept I really like. It's a concept that has saved me and saved my mental health. It was instrumental in curing my depression, right? And the biggest thing I learned when practicing radical acceptance was that there was no such thing as good or bad. There was no such thing as objective quality. Things that people would look as desirable or undesirable were simply as is, and that's fine. Acceptance is all about understanding that the world be worldin', right? The world will do what it wants to do. And instead of, crying yourself to sleep over it, just look at it and go, that's it. That's the world, and that's okay. That's okay. And I will accept this. But I face like an ego conflict with this because, well, what if acceptance turns to complacency? Because I didn't want to be the type of person that's like, oh man, I got no opinion on anything. I accept everything. Meanwhile, like villages are burning outside of my house. My family's knocking on my front door. Help me! Help! And I'm like, it is what it is, right? Like I didn't want to be that kind of person where I just ignored suffering around me. People look down on sensitivity. Don't be sensitive. But I'd actually argue sensitivity is a very good thing, especially for interpersonal relationships. Because me personally, I'm a guy with pretty thick skin.
Thick skin like me. A thwomp. Mm.
If something happens in like a public scenario, I won't be like super heated about it. Like I can regulate my emotions well, which is great for random encounters with strangers, right? That ensures that I don't, get into random fights or that I get murdered, like I'm chilling there. But with deep interpersonal relationships, it can actually be a bit of a problem. And I noticed this in my last relationship where I used to have this belief that relationships are all about compromise, right? Always compromise in a relationship. It doesn't have to just be you, which I heard, right? And I thought I understood. But what I ended up finding out throughout the relationship was that there were multiple moments where I would just sort of like let my partner win. It's like, here you go, we can eat here. Or it's like, here you go, we don't have to do this. We can do what you want. I don't have to always get my way. That's a nice thing to feel. But on the other hand, I can be that way so much that I can start to feel a bit resentful. But because I have this quote unquote thick skin, because I'm not super sensitive, these things like I will feel hurt about. And I won't say anything because I keep telling myself, oh, I should just accept it. Oh, I should just accept it. And that is not the way to live life, I realize, because I wanted to practice radical acceptance. Radical acceptance helped me so much in life. And so I thought to myself, well, what is acceptance? What do you accept without being complacent or practicing tolerance? There is a huge difference between tolerance and acceptance. There's a huge, let's say I was a hardcore Christian. I'm a hardcore Christian with Christian values. I got a cross on my neck. Half of my camera roll is Jesus. I'm hard for Jesus. He did a sick gainer off of a balcony during my prayer sesh. Jesus, I FW that guy, man. I FW that guy. And let's say, I have a gay brother. There's a huge difference between accepting my brother as gay and tolerating my brother as gay. And I hope you as a viewer understand that there's a huge difference between the two, right? Because tolerating is saying, I would prefer it the other way, but I will handle the situation because I want to keep the peace. While acceptance is going, I acknowledge this. I don't know if I understand this yet, but I seek to understand. And I will take this in as this is it. I will accept this. And acceptance is a commitment while tolerance is pussy shit, basically. And the problem with my idea of compromise in a relationship is that a lot of times where I thought I was accepting, I was actually tolerating. In the back of my head, I was secretly wishing that things were the other way. And there would be moments where I hoped that I would wake up one day and they would be a completely different person, you know? And that's not acceptance, that's tolerance. I want to emphasize really quickly with the relationship thing that this is why I preach that collaboration in a relationship is much more important than compromise. If you two have a disagreement, do not just give in and do not take over. You both need to come up with a solution where you both are satisfied, and that includes a conversation where you both are talking it out and going, okay, here's my solution, here's your solution. We're going to combine them together to make the ultimate solution where we are both fulfilled. And if you go about a relationship that way, practicing collaboration instead of compromise, there's a lot less resentment that builds up because you both are ultimately working together in a relationship, which isn't that the entire point of a relationship? And so now the question is, well, how do I know the difference between tolerance and acceptance? And I think it's important to understand what acceptance is, because acceptance, especially radical acceptance, is being able to accept things that are out of your control, right? Right? Well, that's the question. What is out of my control? What is in my control, right? Because a lot of people have this fucked up. A lot of people have this super fucked up. They do not know the difference. I didn't know the difference. Sometimes I still don't know the difference. And I think something important to keep in mind about what is in your control? What is out of your control? Here is the definition. What is out of your control is the result. What is in your control is action. Now, here is an example of what I'm talking about. Let's say I said something about trains. Let's say I was like, I think trains are fucking stupid. Thomas? Fuck that guy. Right? Imagine I really hated Thomas, the tank engine. I just thought he was a piece of shit. You know, he took my money, stole my girl. Fuck that guy. Now, let's say I have a friend who's like, whoa.
I grew up with Thomas, man. Me and him go way back. An ill word against Thomas is an ill word against me.
And let's say they take offense to it. They're like, whoa, whoa, whoa.
Don't talk about Thomas like that. That hurts my feelings.
Now, there are multiple ways to process this situation just now. And what I want to emphasize right here, right now, is that the result of what just happened when I said what I said about Thomas the Tank Engine being a piece of shit was not in my control. It was not in my control. What was in my control was saying Thomas the Tank Engine is a piece of shit. What was not in my control was the reaction, right? The result of saying what I said. And that's really, really important to understand. Any result, any consequence is not in our control. And you may think that there are exceptions to the rule, but the best analogy I can think of is think of it like a turn-based RPG.
Our adventure has started. Oh my god! Help!
And let's say you press the attack button. I will attack. There are 3 outcomes. You attack, it hits the enemy for a certain amount of damage. Second outcome, you attack and it does a critical hit, kills the enemy instantly. The third outcome, you attack and you miss. Now, what did you have control over? Well, I pressed the button that said attack. I had control over that. I did that. What didn't you have control over? How the attack landed. And that's really important to understand for all facets of life. When we say, what is acceptance? What is out of our control? It is the result. My friend fucking hates it when I talk shit about Thomas the Tank Engine. That is the result. Now, I could go on a whole tirade as like, oh, you're so sensitive. You know, I fucking hate that guy. You should hate that guy too. Or I can just be like, he hates talking about this. He hates talking about Thomas. He fucks with that guy. He had memories with that guy. He rode him. You know what it's like to ride a man? It's a very intimate... He doesn't like ill words against Thomas the Tank Engine. Now, am I responsible for his feelings? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. He could like the comments I make. He could dislike the comments I make. He could be disgusted. He could be fearful. He could feel whatever he wants about the comments I make. That is simply out of my control. I have no control over that. And a good way to understand of a result you have control over and a result you don't have control over is this. If an action leads to a result that doesn't happen 100% of the time, if 100% of the time this result isn't a consequence from this action, you were never in a quintillion years in control of that result. Even if there was just a tiny, minuscule 0.0001% chance of an unfavorable result happening, those favorable results were never in your control. Now you can influence the odds. There is such a thing as influencing the odds towards your favor. But at the end of the day, when you press that attack button, you don't know how it's going to land. But what you can do is accept the result. Attack landed, I accept this. I got damage in, we're making good progress. Attack landed, critical hit, huge progress, I can start making some riskier plays. Attack missed, okay, gotta be on the defensive. We've got to play a little more carefully. This is all life is, when you break it down to a science, is a turn-based game. I take an action, a result comes back. I process this result. I accept this result. I take an action according to that result. Now, I was not in control of that result, but that's okay, because I can just take the necessary actions in response to this result, right? I can put the odds in my favor. And this ultimately leads me to a conversation about responsibility. If something was never in our control, how are we responsible for it? I mean, we can influence the odds, right? But especially when we're talking about people and the things we say and the way they feel about them, we aren't in control of how they take what we say. And so assigning yourself responsibility when someone is sad because of something that you said is ludicrous. Because, I mean, when were you ever in control of that? But sometimes we get tripped up in our heads. We have situations in life where people assign us responsible for something that was never in our control. A result happened after an action, and they think to themselves, well, this result happened. It must be because you were in control of that result, which is not true. And the more you get away from the mindset that results are in your control, the more you're willing to accept things that you weren't really willing to accept prior. You're willing to look at yourself kinder. You're willing to not only accept the world around you, but you're also willing to accept certain parts about yourself. And the more you understand that life is turn-based, the more you start to not only live life more freely, but you get away from malignant shame. You get away from self-shame. You stop assigning yourself responsibility, and then you start living. You realize that because you aren't in control of any result, you can do whatever you want. You can try any art. You can try any skill, because no matter what you do, no matter how perfectly you do it, you are never in control of how it'll turn out. And that's okay, because it's not 100% guaranteed. Fucking bars, man. Shit.
I'm the President of the United States. I'm the President of the United States. I'm the President of the United States.